Welcome to the Dirt on Growing, where we don't just plant seeds, we plant ideas that challenge the norm. I'm your host, Brandon Rust from Full Crop Sciences, and this is the podcast where living soil meets real science. From worm castings to bottled nutrients, microbial inoculants, and chemical pesticides, we're here to question the trends, break down the data, and empower your grow. It's time to think deeper and grow better. I want to take a deep dive into the chemistry and biochemistry of calcium silica and how it is converted through environmental weathering and microbial metabolism into divalent calcium ions and orthosilicic acid, which is the bioavailable form of silicon for plants. Calcium silica is a naturally occurring calcium silicate mineral composed of tightly bound silicate tetrahedra and calcium cations within a crystalline lattice. When you think about silicon, most people imagine sand, glass, or even computer chips, not plant nutrients. But in soil science, silicon is the quiet workhorse. It reinforces cell walls, it enhances stress resilience, and it even helps plants resist pathogens and drought. The only catch is that plants don't absorb it unless it's in a very specific soluble form, orthosilicic acid. This is where calcium silicate comes in. Chemically, calcium silica is CaSiO3, which is a naturally occurring mineral loaded with both calcium, silica, magnesium, and iron. But it's locked inside this crystalline lattice that's locked tighter than Fort Knox. The big question is, how does nature, or more specifically microbes, unlock that mineral vault? On a purely abiotic level, that means that without biology, calcium silica dissolves through acid hydrolysis, where protons or positively charged hydrogen ions attack the mineral lattice while breaking silica, oxygen, and calcium bonds. This frees up the divalent form of calcium, which dissolves into the soil solution, and the remaining silica structure is hydrated into orthosilicic acid, the plant available form of silicon. This reaction happens naturally during weathering. Think thousands of years of rainwater, CO2, and root respiration slowly etching away at the rock. But here's the twist. Microbes can accelerate that process by a factor of 10,000 or more. The real action happens in the rhizosphere, the narrow zone around the roots where microbial metabolism meets mineral surfaces. This process is called microbial-mediated silicate weathering. It's driven by three main mechanisms: acidolysis, chelation, and enzymatic oxidation. Microbes like Bacillus, Pseudomonas, Aspergillus, and Trichoderma secrete organic acids like citric, oleic, glutonic, and lactic acids directly into the soil. These acids lower pH and donate protons or positively charged hydrogen ions that attack the calcium silicate bonds. These organic acids pull calcium into a soluble complex while freeing orthosilicic acid. Now that is microbial alchemy, turning stone into nutrients. Microbes also produce siderophores, or metal binding molecules, and extracellular polysaccharides that create low pH biofilms on the surfaces of minerals. Inside of these microzones, calcium is chelated and silicon-oxygen bonds break apart, forming soluble silicic acid. Also, sulfur and iron oxidating microbes generate local acid pulses via metabolic byproducts, further driving calcium silicon dissolution. But for this process to be efficient, several environmental factors must align, including pH, moisture content, and temperature. Any type of condition that limits microbial metabolism will hinder the conversion of calcium silica into divalent calcium ions and monosilicic acid. When the system is functioning optimally, the products of this process liberate calcium ions, which is extremely important for cell wall strength, enzyme activation, and messaging signaling, as well as orthosilicic acid, which is absorbed through the LSI1 and LSI2 transports. Silica reinforces leaves and stems. It boosts resilience to drought and heat and pathogens. It's a natural armor system built from biology and chemistry. So when you look at products like calcium silica, don't just think rock powder. It's a biological reactor waiting to be switched on by the right microbes like Bacillus subtilis, Trichoderma, Pseudomonas. You're activating a living cycle of chelation, dissolution, and nutrient release. And that is what regenerative agriculture is all about, letting biology drive the chemistry. I'm Brandon Rust. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe for more. What's going on, guys? I hope you guys like the format with the pre-recorded video. Uninterrupted, quick, fast-paced, directly to the point. I do want to express some things as well that I didn't touch on in the video. The calcium silica not only contains calcium and silica, but it also contains a small amount of magnesium and iron as well. And one of the benefits also that you'll see is that it doesn't have any nitrogen. And a lot of times when you see calcium or CalMag additives, they have nitrogen in them, and that can hinder the quality, especially if you're trying to get calcium and magnesium into the plant in later stages of growth. So it's really beneficial to use it all the way through to make sure you're always delivering calcium and silica, but you want to start it early in the cycle. Anyway, this is the part where I open it up for Q&A. You guys can ask whatever type of questions you guys want. Try to keep it topic related, but I will keep making these same types of videos, different products and different science stuff. But I need your guys' help to do it, right? Because I have an Ask Brandon question, and make sure you're signed up for the newsletter. I send out newsletters a couple of times a week with podcast updates. Sometimes I do deals and stuff like that, coupon codes. But you can fill out a question form. You can submit it anonymously, or you can be tagged in it. And I'll turn that into content because I've been doing this for so long. Oftentimes, I feel like I'm just repeating myself and saying the same things over and over again. I figured it would be more engaging for you guys to be involved in the actual process of content creation. So figuring out what types of things that you're learning. You know, everybody's at a different stage in their growing journey. And so I want to be able to address all of those different stages. Also, you know, if you like this content, you want to keep learning more, I do this to help with the business. Obviously, we have humate fertilizers, the calcium silica products, microbes, and those are available at bokashiearthworks.net. We're going to be changing it to fullcropscience.com soon. Also, orders right now over $100. Free Starfighter Cross to Miracle Alien Cookie F2s. He's got a question from Secta. He says, I'm in DWC, so I'm using PowerSI. I want to switch over, but I've been doing this forever. What's your thoughts on the PowerSI? Really good question. And I actually wanted to also address this about silica because even though I am, you know, an organic, you know, modified growing mixes, humates, biostimulants, microbes, I would still use something like PowerSI or a mono-orthosilicic acid, even though those things are, you know, they're not naturally produced, right? It doesn't come from a natural source. It's not going to have any negative impact on the system as a whole, and it'll actually stimulate, you know, your plants. So using things like PowerSI or some of the other silica brands is just fine. Even if you're running, you know, a living soil system. Me personally, that's not what I use. Because I'm running living soil systems, I use the calcium silica. And although this isn't in its mono-orthosilicic form, it's not readily plant available. If you rewatch that video and you go back and you listen to understanding acid hydrolysis and also enzymatic hydrolysis through microbial metabolism, actually very, very rapidly converts that CiSO3 into divalent calcium cations, and it hydrates the silicon to form salicylic acid. But it's good. Look, silica is not considered an essential nutrient, but we know from massive amounts of plant research across all different types of crops that it not only improves crop quality, crop yields, resistance to pathogens, resistance to biotic and abiotic stresses. It is such a powerhouse of a biostimulant and as a nutrient itself. It also can stimulate things like the ethylene jasmonic acid pathways, which are defense regulated pathways. So when these things are activated, the plant naturally turns on genes, or it upregulates the gene transcription process to encode for certain resistance to these different stress factors. So let me know if you guys got any questions. If not, I'll give you a couple more minutes, and then I'm going to end this one real quick. I'm going to keep creating content like this. Make sure you guys like and subscribe and share and follow. That helps get my numbers up. That helps with visibility. In that, even if you're not someone who is actively purchasing and using our products, sharing helps engagement, and it helps me as a small business owner, because this isn't, I don't run a massive operation. I'm not privately, I'm not, funded by anybody. I've done all this and built this with me and a small team of guys. So here's another question from Bada Boab. Were the seats you gave away, are the seeds that I'm giving away in orders are they the same as a month ago? No. So those were different seeds. These actually have quite a lot of them in there. There's probably about, 19, 20 seeds in each pack. And the whole thing is I had so many of them, probably 400 packs. And I was speaking to Cap, and I was like, I'm probably just going to give these away, because he was like, we're going to do a project in the future sometime together. And so these F2s, I'm just giving away with orders. Ups and downs. So let's talk about the Sour Cheeseberry. Maybe on another episode we could do that. I really wanted to keep it topic specific for these podcasts, but we can do another, talk on genetics and stuff like that. But I can tell you what the genetics are: sour diesel, UK cheese, and Trainwreck blueberry. I guess we can talk about it. Some other people are asking genetic questions. Yeah, so it's been around for a while. It won some competitions. I also did a project with the Sour Cheeseberry where we did a grow off. So I think 15 or 16 different people each got a clone, and they got to grow it out the way that they grow. And then it was tested by the same lab at the same time. And we got to see the results from all 15 different growers. So one of the cool things about the Sour Cheeseberry was that with that specific cultivar, I got to see and look at how the, cannabinoids slightly vary in different grow methods, and how those terpenes slightly vary. Like you might have one terpene that is higher on this grower sample, and then it's a little bit lower. And so the dominant terpenes would change a little bit and stuff. But it was really good. It all hit between about 22 to 28%, and between 2.5 and about 4.8 on terps. Can I rank the chems before I leave? I don't know. I've only grown chem D. That's the only one that I grow. So I can't give you any, information on experience that I don't have. What type of female can I expect with the Afghani Bullrider? They get big. They're fucking stinky. They're nice though. You find them. They don't take too long to flower. Here's another question. The other day I mentioned everyone has a different climate, which determines which and how much newts you need. Is there a baseline of NPK to shoot for when amending soil? Yeah, I mean, regardless of environmental conditions, the nutrient requirements don't change. It's just that the environment impacts the delivery of those nutrients, especially when we're talking about transpiration. So any environmental effects that limit the movement of water will limit the movement of electrolytes like calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium. And so if you're in an environment that's limiting uptake, then regardless of if you have the proper balance and quantity of nutrients in your soil, they're not going to be delivered efficiently. So there are specific targets that I aim for, and what I'm doing is I'm using, a standard soil and a saturated paste test, and I look at the data, and then I determine what needs to be added and what quantity to maintain sufficiency and balance with those nutrients. But I have all those baselines both for standard soil, saturated paste tests, leaf tissue targets, and sap targets. On the ones that weren't labeled, it was gas, so the same gas, Starfighter crossed to MAC, crossed to Peach Daiquiri. It was actually Peach Daiquiri was the female. Peach Daiquiri was from Fresh Coast, so Peach Daiquiri crossed to Starfighter and Miracle Alien Cookie. With the seeds, what products would be best to start a sand soil and a sandy soil? That's what my soil is like at my property. It's very sandy. I use the humates and the microbes. That's mainly what I use. And I grew out 15, 16 footers, in my backyard in really poor sandy soil. So if I've never bred anything before, in theory, could I hunt for the best male and female in that pack and do a bunch more research and make some more bomb beans? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't put restrictions on any of my stuff. If I'm putting it out into the ethos, into the sphere of cultivators, it's out there. You can do with it whatever you want, man. Breed with it, fucking make more seeds. I don't have any say. I mean, I couldn't stop you anyway, and I wouldn't really put out like stuff. I have stuff that I keep that I don't give out, so. What would be the NPK ratio when amending new soil or coco? So it's different, right? So you have what's called a standard target, which is just the amount of total nutrient, and then you have what's called a saturated paste when we're looking at data. And the saturated paste basically determines the ppm or the solubility of each individual nutrient. So if we're talking about a saturated paste test, I am looking for between 5 and about 1,000 ppm of total soluble salts. Chloride levels, I'm looking to have as low as possible. Bicarbonate, I'm looking for as low as possible. Sulfur, I usually like to see between 30 and 60. Phosphorus, 4 ppm. Calcium, 200 ppm. Magnesium, 30 to 42 ppm. Potassium, 100 to 150 ppm. Sodium as low as possible. Boron, I like to see it at 0.09 or 0.08. I like to see iron at 1 ppm, and I like to see manganese at about 0.3 to 0.4. I like to see copper at 0.05. I like to see zinc at 0.08. And then I like to see nitrogen at the start of a cycle if I'm vegging for a couple of weeks at around 125 to 150 ppm of nitrogen. Up and Down says, with a male plant, do I have to put it into flower to get the pollen, or will it drop pollen under 18.6? That's a really good question. So bad genetics will drop pollen under stress conditions. So if you have a male plant that is root bound, or if you have a plant that is you know, deficient in nitrogen or any type of situation like that, oftentimes what you'll see is male plants will start to pre-flower and start to drop pollen, even though they're not in, you know, a 12-12 cycle. I do not select males that do any of that. That's one of the reasons why I don't see any hermaphroditic tendencies in my lines, is because I'm very, very selective about how I choose males. So I put them through a rigorous stress testing, which includes getting them root bound, getting them deficient on nutrients, just really torturing them. And if they pre-flower, I will not use those. I only use males that don't pre-flower under stress conditions. So it can do that. But if your plant is, you know, dropping pollen under 18.6 or 16.8 or whatever your veg cycle is, then it's probably not a good genetics to select. That's my opinion. Is the Afghani Bullrider 89NL an F1 or an F2? It's an F1. How's the yield on the Blueberry Trainwreck times MK Ultra? It's fucking insanely big. That plant itself, dude, out of control. It's got the frames of those older varieties, but it is much, much beautiful, much more beautiful than some of the older stuff. It's fucking great, though. Great yielder, grows great. Here's, what do I think about Todd McCormick's Pure Indica Afghani, the same cut compared to your Afghani Bullrider? So I haven't grown any of Greg's Pure Indicas. I actually have some seeds. He gave me some, and they are in the Battle of the Breeders, but we keep getting all of our licensing stuff postponed. There are like new regulations. I thought we were going to be able to open by November, by the end of this month, and it looks like they're going to try to push it back another 3 months because they want to do additional screening and stuff. So I'm drafting a legal letter and I'm sending it to OBN, the Department of Narcotics, and telling them that if they don't expedite this process, we're going to sue them. But I don't know. I don't have a comparison. I haven't grown his out yet. But all his Afghanis are all legit. Like his NL stuff came from Steve Murphy. Or I mean, came from Greg McCormick, which came from Steve Murphy, which is the originator of all of that genetic material. Do you have any research on wollastonite? That is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about calcium silica. I like to say calcium silica because when I say wollastonite, nobody knows what I'm talking about. So this whole episode is about wollastonite. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this one up for today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the new format. I'll be dropping more of these. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff helps with engagement. I'm Brandon Rust. I'll see you guys later.